Call to order this Design Review Board meeting, regular meeting, Monday, March 3rd, 2014. Simsbury Town Offices, main meeting room, 5:30 p.m. I'll take roll call. Ron Perry.
Here.
John Carroll.
Here.
Anka Dragulski. Jonathan LeChevre.
Here.
Paul Lanza. And Tony Draplick. Not here. Okay. Start with this one. All right, discussion and possible action items. A, application number 14-06 of Sunlight Construction, Inc., applicant MCA Enterprises, LLC, owner for a site plan amendment and zone change from PO to PAD on the property located at 132 Firetown Road, map F09, block 202, lot 015 and 016, zone PO.
John, I'm an alternate. Don't we have to do something about that? I'm an alternate. Don't we have to do something before?
Yes, excuse me.
Actually, you're all seated because there are others that are missing, so I just made a note for the record that you're all seated this evening.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Bill Ferrigno. I'm the president of Sunlight Construction. We're a residential building company located in Avon. And the application before you tonight is for a referral to the, I believe, the zoning commission. The property that we're applying for at 132 Firetown, I'm not sure if you are familiar with the property. Basically, it's being used as an office now. The building that was there, I think, if I have this right, was either built in 69 or 70. There was a zone change at that time from residential to PO. I don't know the details of that or why that happened, but clearly it's an entirely residential area. And this proposal is proposes to return that small piece of property, it's about 1.1 acres, to a residential condition. So to do that, we're actually applying under the PAD zone, and the proposal is to do a couple things. One, it would be to take the existing building, what's there, and convert it into a duplex style structure, excuse me. And I'll show you, I have some architectural drawings, so let me just give you the broad overview first. Take that building and use most of it as it is. It's a very structurally sound building, but convert it so that it has 2 units of residential, both being accessed on either, instead of on Firetown now, they would be accessed, one on Plank Hill and one on White Oak. And then the remaining property, which is predominantly made up of a parking lot now for the office, would be converted into 2 areas to be used for single-family houses. Again, one would be accessed from White Oak Lane and one would be accessed from Plank Hill. So, using the graphics, I'm not sure which materials you have in front of you. Do you have the development plan in front of you?
We have that, yes.
Okay. So what will happen is that in order for the existing building to function well as a residence, as a duplex, we would be adding on a garage to each side, meaning that you would access that building from the 2 respective side streets. What I'm trying to look for is a nice rendering here. So I had Jack Kemper take measurements and photos and whatnot of the existing building, which basically goes from about here to over here now. This is what you see from Firetown Road now, and this is actually where the entrance is for the main entrance, although most people access it from the back in the parking lot. And by cleverly putting on a couple of garages on the side, and by changing the entrances so they come in from the side rather than the front, we convert this building into, and also doing an extra roof detail here, we convert into I think, a much more architecturally pleasing look for this area. You can see on the side view here, here would be your garage, and here would be your access, your entrance over here. And the same thing would be true on the other side, okay? As I say, that building would be then converted into a duplex, probably would be a rented building. Although legally it could be split so that it could be sold, but my purpose is to rent the building to 2 separate units. And then that neighborhood in that area is somewhat eclectic in terms of architecture, but if anything, it's a more modest type neighborhood. So my goal would be on the other two properties would be to put modestly sized homes, probably in the 2,200 to 2,500 square foot range. And I brought you some, actually some photos of some buildings that we have built in other areas. It would be examples of the type of architecture that we would presume could be built here. And the idea is to, again, do something a little bit understated from what you typically see being built on larger home sites. The idea would be to build either, these are Cape-style homes, where you'd have master bedrooms on the first floor. This is a building that's a kind of a transitional colonial, if you will, that has bedrooms on the second floor, all on the second floor. But it's more of a country look to it. It's not that formalized, very stark type of large colonial that is selling in higher price ranges. I would think probably the market range here is somewhere in the very high 3s to mid 400 range, which is probably something that you don't see too often in this town. This, again, these are just examples. I've worked with hiremen and staff just to say that what we want to do is also work with the marketplace. So I mean, it's possible that it might be a different design, but this kind of gives you an idea of the character of what we have in mind for this project. Probably will be served by water and sewer. We're trying to get the gas company to extend their gas main up there right now. I don't have an agreement with them yet. They're not as close as I thought they would be, but if it's not natural gas, we would probably use propane gas. One of the features, and I think the benefits of this kind of application, is that the coverage on this site is going to go from about 42% of solid surfacing and impervious surfacing down to about 23%. So it's a lot more of this lot is going to go back into grass and landscaping than currently exists. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do you want to show the layout though of the houses?
Yep, sure. One more, I guess. So, using this map, Firetown Road is actually over here. And this layout shows the existing footprint of the existing building, and this hashed area are the two proposed additions, which would be basically the garages and entryways. And this scheme is, we've kind of changed this a little bit because we didn't like these houses being so close together in the back. So we have to actually offset them so that each house will have a little bit more private area. This was kind of the first pass at it, but this gives you an idea of, you have a kind of exclusive use area here, here, and then this building shares this whole lot here. So it turns out that each of the properties are about the size of the existing underlying residential zone in this area, which is R15. Just about 15,000 square feet per lot.
Can I ask a question? Is it more cost efficient to renovate that other building than tear it down and build two more nice single-family homes there? Or is it because you want the rental income, or? I know that building well, that it's funky, and that corner, I think this will be great to take that corner and make it more dense. But that building's like an old, like raised ranch style thing, isn't it?
It is. But I mean, I guess it depends upon what you mean by it's a funky building. I mean, being a builder, we've done extensive research. I mean, the building is pretty structurally sound. So if you want to ask me, could the building be raised and two new structures put in its place? The answer is yes. Economically, it's probably not as good a situation to do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I also, to be honest with you, I mean, I'm dealing with tearing down properties all the time and rebuilding them to answer the so-called needs of the marketplace. And I mean, I don't really think it's a good use of resources, to be perfectly frank with you. But I do agree with you that architecturally, the building as it sits right now is not going to ever win any awards. I get that. Okay, so I wouldn't be comfortable doing this if we weren't able to kind of convert that building to something that looks quite a bit nicer. So I appreciate your concern over that. And it is something that we thought about. It's one of the first things that Hiram and I talked about was if we were going to do this, can we make the building look better than it is? And so that's a goal that we had right from the beginning.
Question. On the facade of the building on the Firetown Road side, where the entrance was, it's hard to tell from this distance what you are proposing. It still looks like an entrance?
Yeah,
From this
okay.
distance?
Yeah.
What's going on there?
Well, what Jack did, Jack Kemper, what he did was he made it more of, it's not an entrance, he made it more of a kind of an architectural feature by using so what he did was he kind of put a little, well, I would say cupola, but it's not really, it's just a raised roof section here. This is the old doorway, which will not be a doorway anymore, but it is still kind of a central feature of the structure. So that when you have something that has that much mass, you want to kind of break it up so that it doesn't starkly, hit you in the eye like it kind of does now. So I think what he was trying to do here is just to break up that roof there and give it a little bit of feature there. So there is no walkway or entrance over on this side, but that portion of the building kind of remains as a focal point.
What is it that the detail is where the door was?
Oh, it's just some raised paneling and some nice trim and whatnot. That's
Is it glass?
it won't be glass, no.
Could you talk about what you're thinking about for materials, siding?
Oh, I think it'll be vinyl siding. I mean, I think vinyl is a material of choice today. I hear so many times people say, I'm tired of painting this and I don't want to pay for it. So, I mean, we're using vinyl siding in homes that are of much higher value than this. Remember, the vinyl siding has gone through a pretty, in my opinion, has gone through a period of technical advances in that product. And also, it's also what you use for the trim material around the windows and fascias and soffits that can make a difference. So.
I have a question on procedure, which I often ask. This is, I think, the first PAD that we've been looking at since it was established. And our members, except for me at this evening, are new. And perhaps Hiram would like to answer the question, or both of you. At this stage, what does the Design Review Board do? Or what are we supposed to do? Are we approving a site plan? Or we don't have the normal things that we would expect, for instance, colors and samples of the final design of the two other buildings. We have a site plan and we have some elevations. So educate us, if you would.
Sure. John, the basic idea for this is a residential development, so typically you wouldn't even see it, other than the fact that it's being converted from a PO, professional office zone, to this PAD. I think the basic idea here is, and I suggested to Bill, that we get the board's input in terms of how the site lays out. That's basically it in this case. The finished details on the structures, really up to them. You can see as far as they've gone so far, I don't think they've gone any further than that in terms of final design. But I think that what I would be interested in, I think what the zoning commission will be interested in later on this evening, is just how you think that the structures relate to each other, how they relate to the streets, any kind of general comments like that. I think that's the basic idea in this one. John?
Personally, I like the fact that the parking lot's going away.
That's what I hear from a lot of people. Right, yeah.
It's kind of a little bit of an eyesore.
It's an eyesore.
Right
now, it's being used as a cut through.
Right.
Yeah. That, of course, that will go away.
I like the idea. I like the basic concept. This particular building, I think needs some looking at in terms of particularly the roof line. It's almost too symmetrical. I think the concept is good. Did I understand you to say that you were not going to use the front as an entry?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
like I say, it's a little bit, it's almost as boring as the existing building. So you may want to look at that a little bit more. Particularly the original structure in terms of the ridge line and the roof area compared to the rest of the building.
Okay.
So it needs a little bit of attention, a little bit more.
So we could break up the roof a little bit more if we put some dormers on there.
Yeah.
You know, the dormers, I actually talked to Jack about that, and he's, you know, when you're talking to a creative architect, sometimes you don't want to take away his poetic license, but if you folks think some dormers would be nice, I'd be happy to communicate that to him.
Are you thinking you might put gas fireplaces in these units? Because, you know, then that might translate into sided chimneys that would help break up the roof line as a possibility.
Okay, well, we might use gas fireplaces, but when you use gas fireplaces, you don't have chimneys.
Don't have to.
Right, well, that's right, you don't have to, but.
I'm just talking about,
Yeah.
you know, visual.
Ideas to break up the roof lines.
Sure, yeah, understood. Yeah, I would have no problem, even as a condition of your referral, if that's what it's called, to, you know, suggested 2 or 3 dormers, I think. The dormers, in my opinion, would break it up a little bit more, and again, I don't usually tell Jack what to do because he's
What I
pretty.
would just suggest to him, pass it along if you wish, is trying to emphasize that center, you know, with the dormer and where actually nothing, instead of emphasizing that mid-section where nothing actually happens now, no more entrance.
That's right, yeah.
Just some very small, probably bathroom door, windows, you know, so really nothing happens. Just forget about that section, you know.
So you're saying take away the...
Take it away, don't do anything with the
Well, that's
roof there.
interesting.
Just
Okay.
build the
Yeah.
dormers, you know, on each side.
Yeah, okay, all
Where you
right.
might want
Yeah.
bigger windows, who
Yeah.
knows, you know, if something happens.
So you're saying actually this is bringing attention to that central area, well, maybe we should take it away.
Take it away
That's a
completely
neat idea.
and
Yeah.
do it on the other 2
Yeah,
sides.
okay, all right.
You know, just a thought.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's visually confusing. I mean, it's still from, that's why I was asking the question earlier. From here, it still looks like an entrance.
Right, so your point is that actually your eye's drawing you to this location, and we probably don't want to do that.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
learning something here tonight. Yeah. Well, we have no problem with that. We would be happy to
What's the length of that ridge line?
64 feet, I believe. Yeah, I mean, as I say, nobody's going to ever give this building as it stands any real architectural awards. We get that, okay? It was done, somebody was just thinking about their costs and getting maximum square footage for the dollar back in 40 years ago, whatever it was, we get that. But I will tell you that it actually inside is, I mean, it's a very well-built building. So just to your point, originally, I mean, I just don't like tearing down buildings that don't
Yeah,
need to
no,
be
that's
torn
fine,
down.
I just wondering, but yes, that's
Yep,
great, I
yep,
agree.
Yep.
All right.
According to the application, we're looking at a site plan amendment and a zone change.
Excuse me.
Well, we have to make a motion, we have to make an advisory motion to the zoning commission. And my question would be, if we recommended approval of the site plan amendment, we don't have to say zone change, that's not our business. We can say that, and you don't have before us now the information that we need to make a referral to the zoning commission relative to design of the structures and the layout of the landscaping and all that. So we can't approve that house, for example.
Okay. You're talking about the architecture of the building, right?
If you're familiar with our requirements, in order for us to approve the design of an applicant that you've applied for, we have to see that design. And if you have 2 choices, either you come back with your final, this could be an informal rather than a formal hearing. Our informal is where we look at what you're thinking about, what you're planning, and comment as we are doing. And then you can go back and bring your final back to us for final referral. Am I correct in saying no?
I think, John, I think what they're really looking for is recommendations or suggestions from you with regard to the basic site layout in terms of the number of units, the use of the property for residential, that kind of thing. I think, as Bill said, they're not far along at all on the design, and they're willing to make those adjustments. So I think those are good comments to be noted for the record, and certainly the applicant hears that. So
did I hear you correctly that because it's residential, we are not actually going to, pass judgment on the design?
Typically,
of the structure?
If it was typical subdivision, that somebody just came in, divided a piece of property into 4 lots and wanted to build 4 houses, you wouldn't see that, because it's not a commercial development.
Right.
This is a little different in that it's a PAD, so it's a change from a professional office to a PAD zone. But the basic layout is what we really thought we wanted to have you get some input on. So that was important.
So would he have to come back for architectural?
No.
Okay.
I mean, in that case, if the answer is no, I would rather see 4 houses there than a vacant parking lot all the time, personally.
I think that's the kind of important thing.
That's kind of what we were going for, right? Yep.
Not just because it's positive, but I think that's what the zoning commission will want to hear.
Right.
That's
No, I would agree with that.
That's fine.
I mean, as long as we don't have to, there's no design issues.
Yeah. This particular layout here, I think this is the sort of the second generation where the houses are slightly offset.
Yeah,
The two new ones are slightly offset.
Yeah, I think this is really better because it gives each person a better backyard, and we'll put some shrubbery in there, not just to help that out a little bit more too.
I mean, obviously, you built within the setbacks.
Of course, right, yeah. So one of the keys here too, the reason we chose this particular split here, now we offset them, is that we were trying to be respectful of, we have a neighbor right over here, his house is not shown, but that house is closer to the property line, so we wanted to take our unit and put it over to the side. Well, also, another feature of this is, I think we have a 25-foot conservation area here, so it's a non-disturbance area against the neighbors. So I think that's going to be helpful for both properties, really.
And that easement doesn't interfere with the garage on the north side?
No, you're talking about over here?
No, the other, on the split unit, there's an easement on the north side of that garage.
Oh, no. No, the easement, that's for the sanitary sewer to go up there. No, there's room to do it all.
Well, me or him?
So can we make a motion?
Yes, Ron.
Ron,
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Do you have the format?
does he need to fill one of these out here? Highlight?
We don't have to
I think
fill it.
I think this is such an odd one. Let me help if I can a little bit. So the recommendation would be to recommend to the zoning commission approval based upon the information that's been presented, the fact that it's being converted from a PO zone, professional office zone, to a PAD for the use for 4 residential structures, essentially laid out as shown on the submitted materials. Design suggestions with regard to modification of the existing structures noted by the applicant, to de-emphasize the center and to perhaps emphasize the units on the side. Landscaping to be provided in accordance with high-quality residential standards. And also a note, just for the record too, that the applicant has shown a 25 feet, right?
It's 25, right?
Conservation strip on the
Line is that?
East side. It's east side, right?
east side, between the proposed development and the other existing dwellings. I think that's what you said.
That's exactly what I said.
Yep.
Second.
Wow.
That's fantastic. What a memory.
It's a little different, as John knows, and but that's, I think that'll get you where you need to go.
Yeah, perfect.
That's exactly what I said.
You second?
I did.
Okay, all in favor?
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now tell Jack Kemper what you said about the dormers. I think it's a better idea myself.
All right, application number 1408 of St. Mary Church Corporation, owner, for a site plan amendment for modular classrooms on the property located at 942 Hot Meadow Street, map H09, block 227, lot 001, zone R15.
Anybody here from St. Mary's? You're not here from St. Mary's?
Well, St. Mary's wouldn't have him. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Know me too well. I think you have in your packet of information tonight a brief review from Howard Beach with regard to the application for St. Mary's. These are the classrooms. A little bit of background on this, and I didn't, nor do I intend to make an application and proposal for the church. I met with the folks from the church, the business manager, quite a few months ago, actually. And they indicated to me that they had a security audit of their facility, and that one of the things that they needed to do was to move some of the music practice spaces outside of the existing building to some temporary classrooms. And I explained to the business manager what would be needed in terms of an application coming in to let the commissions know. I did indicate that it is in the town center zone that's covered by the form-based code that we just spent a lot of time on. And then about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, these showed up. No application.
They're in the parking lot. I went to look, it's like.
Didn't let us know. They just showed up. And to be honest with you, I have no idea why. They simply showed up. I don't have a recommendation for you in terms of what to do. They're going to have to ultimately go to the zoning commission to seek approval for putting them here. To me, this is a perfect situation where this board, with its design review function, may have a thing or two to say about the structures in the town center. I think that the only thing I can say at this point is that I'm told that they're temporary. I don't know exactly what that means here. I'm not sure if Howard covered that in his memo or not. There is adequate parking on the site, and I'm certainly, you want to be clear for the record, that I'm certainly not trying to prevent the church from doing whatever it needs to do to make their students safe. But I do think that the way this was done puts us in a very bad spot, frankly. They have already shown up, as somebody mentioned. We were sort of surprised when that happened.
Are they occupying them, or are they just sitting there?
They will. They propose to occupy them.
When do they want to occupy them?
I don't know, because they're not going to get a CO until the zoning commission acts on this.
So right now, they're just sitting there, locked up?
According to Howard's letter, they've leased these already.
They do have the cart before the horse, in my opinion.
I went by there yesterday just to see the site, because I like to, I was driving over to Terriffill, and I was somewhat stunned to see them sitting in the parking lot already.
Yep.
So there's no speculation about what they're going to look like in the environment.
Yeah.
We can see it.
Yeah.
Are there plans to put an addition on the school to, when you say temporary, is it to ultimately be replaced by?
At this point in time, we don't know anything more than what you see on. I think you have as part of your package, you have this sort of sketch of the site plan where they're located.
Yep.
That's all we know at this point in time. What I am hopeful, and see if you agree, is that you could make an appropriate recommendation to the zoning commission, maybe number one, that they shouldn't have done this without coming in first to talk about the design. And maybe number two, that the specific period of use be limited, and that they come back after a certain period of time, maybe it's a year, and say, if they propose to keep them there, we really want to revisit this issue.
And what they're proposing, I mean, we use these buildings all the time for temporary offices. What they're proposing as a double wide in two sections is not going to fit with that deck and ramp where they're saying it's going to fit. Knowing that the parking space is 18 feet long, That driveway's probably another 18. There's only 30 feet between that curb line and the next row of parking spaces. The buildings themselves are gonna be 30 feet wide.
Ladies and
If it was
gentlemen.
even going to,
If I may,
they're not,
you're entirely right.
I'm struggling with this,
All right.
even with it fitting there. Just general numbers, I'm struggling with it even that location.
Here is the struggle that we have. This is a project which has absolutely no way to approve in accordance with our design guidelines. Number one, that's number one. Number two, the applicant is not here to answer our questions or to show us what we need from all applicants in terms to make a recommendation. I therefore make a motion that we table this application until such time as the zoning commission wishes to take action or the applicant wishes to appear.
Can I ask a question before anybody seconds that or whatever? Do we have guidelines as to how to deal with temporary structures?
I don't think that they're as clear as they ought to be. I think that typically when we hear about temperature, actually, are you here for St. Mary's? Okay.
Oh,
So if somebody
good
can answer your
timing.
questions. So let me stop and let you
So
talk.
we don't really have anything in our guidelines
We
that
don't.
Already
says
there,
you're allowed
sitting in
to
the
put something
parking
here
Of course, they
for,
drive by
2
every day.
months or whatever while you're,
That's right. We don't
Okay.
really have anything, I don't think that was anticipated, and typically when we get
This is an
temporary
economic-
structures, we would deal them on a very temporary basis, so. But let me stop now and. see
I
what-
withdraw the motion for the record.
Okay, great. Tell me what you have in mind.
I'm Bill Hayden. I am the business manager for St. Mary's Parish. We after the Newtown incident a year ago, we had a security assessment, and the security assessment recommended that we not be using the lower church as we had been previously to supplement educational space for the for our K-8 programs, music, art, library, preschool, and so we did those. So we made some adjustments. We are working on a facilities master plan, but that leaves us without that extra educational space. So modular units, we are hoping to be there for months, but like I said, we're working on a plan, series of possibilities to try to accommodate the educational space that we need to get that programming done. I'm not sure exactly what else.
so these are temporary for how long?
The plan is for it to be about 30 months, but
30 months?
yeah, 24 to 30 months.
Does that mean you're gonna add on to the school, or?
Well, I mean, it seems likely if we're gonna solve that problem, we're gonna have to do some kind of permanent construction that is likely to either eliminate programming, eliminate a grade, or we're gonna have to do some kind of addition. Well, we're pretty early in the process, or otherwise improve the space under the lower church and its and the safety. But it's the
Where
lower
did the
church.
30 months estimate come from? Is that some plan that you?
Well, it's the stage of the stage that the planning that we're in. We have we've had a facility working group working since since that security assessment came out, so we're developing the priorities for the parish as a whole and the school specifically. So it's not, the 24 months is the target, but knowing how these things work, it's 24 to 30 months is what we're anticipating.
Have you had anyone do a full site plan? Like, I know you have a survey, but have you actually had anyone do a site plan with showing these on the site? Not just like a hand sketch with some dimensions?
A site plan with...
Meaning actually taking these to their true scale and putting them in real life onto the site plan.
Not positive that we have. Not positive that we have that.
The only reason why she's asking is before you came in, we were discussing the buildings themselves. Round numbers, I think they're 60 by 20.
50, yeah, 58 by 22, I think.
So the dimensions just don't seem to work. The building scale doesn't seem to work with the parking space between, and then the driving lane between the next set of parking spaces, and having that handicap ramp and everything else that you're gonna need. It just doesn't seem that those 4 buildings are gonna fit within that space.
It's 2 buildings.
Yeah, that's 2 deep, but there's 4 of them.
No, it's 2, it's 2 classrooms. The modular units are 58 feet long. They go together lengthwise and create 2 classrooms.
There's 2 units, 4 rooms.
No, 2 rooms.
Well, 4 altogether.
No, two
It
altogether.
looks like 4, but I don't think
Oh,
this is a
you're
wall.
not using a wall?
I think that's dashed, like that's where they hitch together. So that's one classroom and that's one classroom.
But is it the temporary structures? The temporary structures are only 12 foot wide. If you're
No,
gonna
I
get those,
understand
to get that 22 and change feet,
Yeah.
it's 4 structures, it's 4 buildings. Because they can't put them on the road at 22 feet.
No, it's only 2 structures. 58 by
14.2, looks like.
Yeah,
28 feet.
58 by 11 and change that go together to create 58 by 22. 2 rooms are created.
It says 28.
There's no center wall.
Right, so it's 28 feet deep.
There's a center wall in each unit that it's cross section. Right, so
Remember what I'm saying is this has to be like this. They split together.
yes,
that's how they came. They're modular, the modular building themselves, there's actually 4 of them that make up the 2 rooms.
okay, but they came in 2 pieces. There were
Correct.
2 units, so this wall is there, but it's
Correct.
it's part of. There were only 2 units.
Right.
The units were sort of subdivided or divided in half. Right.
Yeah.
You had half a room on in each unit. Right.
And I guess what we're saying is that doesn't seem logically, and the reason why Jennifer was asking if we've scaled this into the parking lot, it is taking those dimensions. It doesn't look as though it's gonna fit. 18 foot parking space, 18 foot
Yeah. It
driving
overhangs.
lane,
Right.
and then the ramp, and the handicap ramp, and then turn around. It just doesn't seem as though it's gonna fit curb line to back of this set of parking lots.
It does overhang the curb.
And those are things that we'd want to know. That's why we're asking for you to put it on the plan as a scale,
Okay.
so we can see where it's going to land on a curb line, where it's going to land in the parking lot, and how it's going to fit in that space.
The other thing we were talking about before you
Madam
got
Chairman,
here.
may I? The chairman of the zoning commission was just arrived. Good evening, Rob.
Good.
Welcome, because we have a problem here. And I don't want to surprise you or invite you to comment, but we're looking at the trailer or the modular classrooms at St. Mary's. And our problem as the Design Review Board is it doesn't meet any of our guidelines. All right? And we have to make a recommendation to you. And I started, and then Bill arrived, and we're talking now about detail. The detail is superfluous in my judgment because, one, they're there, two, they are what they are, and three, they don't meet our guidelines at all. So what would you suggest?
Well, yeah, I came in just to,
Listen,
yes.
I don't want to put you on
I'm
the
not up to
spot.
speed on the use of the timing or anything else relative to this, so.
Chairman may have to vote on this another hour or so, so you may not want
Yeah.
to make a decision at this point. I think, John, you've stated pretty much where the board is, you know, and unless there's other information that would make a difference to the board, I think it's pretty clear where you need to head with regard to what your guidelines are. The fact that the structures did show up with sort of without any notice. I'm empathetic to the church's position, and if they're temporary, that may somewhat temper what the zoning commission does ultimately, but I'm not sure it's going to make a lot of difference to you. I think that it needs to sort of meet those guidelines, or you pretty much have your path sort of paved for you where you need to go. But that's, I mean, I don't know what else to say. That's pretty clear. I don't know what else to say on that. So.
Well, I've been trying to solve your problem and solve our problem.
For sure.
Right? And our problem is this: we have not often, but once in a while, we get into a situation not quite like this, where we have to overlook or not enforce, if you will, our guideline for what otherwise would be a good reason. As a matter of fact, if you read the guidelines, you'll see that kind of language. This situation is beyond that kind of discussion. The sight lines are wrong. I mean, you can see those from halfway up the road to Seminary Road from Iron Horse. And they're not pretty. They don't go with the architecture. They don't go anywhere. I understand the requirement and the need, but we have a procedure which we have to follow, and I've been trying to figure out how to word it.
I think if there was plan to make an addition, and if there was some avenue that we knew that these were very permanent, and I say very permanent, 3 years is a lengthy amount of time. If there were plans to make an addition in the works, and there were things that were moving forward to accommodate the space, then I think us looking at this as a temporary structure is easier to do. At this point, there's no reason to believe, and I don't know that you do or don't have plans to move forward, but there's really no plans for this to not be temporary. And in 3 years, we're sitting here again saying, well, geez, I need forgiveness.
It's like
And the buildings are here.
squatters' rights.
Right, and that's what I'm having the most difficulty with. Had you come in and said, yes, we've consulted with an architect, we've talked to this, we're having plans drawn up, here's preliminary documents that we're working through, we still don't know what we're gonna do, but we need to solve this immediate issue, I think we would be more inclined to
We do actually
understand
have,
this as a temporary building.
right, we do actually have, I looked in my folder, I don't have them with me, but we do have an architect working with us on the facilities working group. We do actually have, we do have plans that have been, I mean, there's at this point, 15 or 10 or 15 possibilities that have been drawn up by the architect. So it's not, we're a long way in terms of the number of iterations that we have to go, not a long way. Or they're working very diligently. They meet almost weekly to work through this.
When do you want to occupy these temporary structures?
Well, I mean, as soon as it's practical. But I mean, I would want to step back and make sure that, first of all, I'm taking all the all the responsibility for it. But we thought we had done what we were supposed to do. I misunderstood where we were in the process. I thought things had been worked on. I mean, we worked on this where we originally came on this many months ago, and had shown rough drawings, but then more of the concrete drawings in November, I think, to Henry, apparently paperwork didn't get in that it was supposed to get in. I thought it had gotten in. So there is definitely a misunderstanding on our part as to where we were, and that's all my responsibility. So.
Next meeting and see what happens at the zoning meeting after this. Can we do that?
What's that?
Can we table our decision to our next meeting and I'd like to see what happens at the zoning meeting and get further
We have to make
information.
a recommendation for this to go to zoning.
Tonight? Is it going to zoning tonight?
Well, it's on their agenda. Whether they'll decide tonight or not, I don't know. I think that clearly the commission will understand the situation and hear about the situation. Whether they'll make a decision tonight or not, I don't know. Could go on their next meeting, 2 weeks from now. So I would just say one thing. I want to be really clear. You start to get near that 3-year period, there's a potential problem with the state statutes, and as structures are in place for 3 years without an enforcement action, they could be there forever. So I just want to be really clear about that, and I'll tell the zoning commission the same thing. So, my sense would be that if the commission wanted to approve it for a year with the requirement that the applicant continue to come back and update them with regard to what's going on with plans for the structures, something like that might be able to serve both people. But clearly, I don't think that the townspeople, when they created the town center code, had in mind these kinds of structures there for any extended period of time, certainly. So I just want to be really clear about that.
And I know it's just me saying it at this point, but the parish has no interest in having these things there any longer than is absolutely necessary for a variety of reasons.
Now, will you need them in the summer? Because you'll get out in June and you don't.
Well, for the classroom space, they wouldn't necessarily be needed in that.
If they're leased, could they go away come June 31st, and then while you keep working and?
I think that's probably technically possible. I'm not sure if that would be feasible. It would be feasible to take them out and then put them back in before the start of the school year.
If power requirements,
Yeah.
sanitary requirements, it's a different,
Be
could be done, but it's challenging.
Assuming that you had a plan in place to, and a timeline to put an addition on the school. My recollection from the old days is that the piece of property that abuts your parking lot is owned by the Westminster School on Hot Meadow Street.
Yeah, north of it, there's
Yeah.
a small spot that is.
Did you make some arrangement to lease that land to put those units on and some of these other concerns? But my personal point of view is, I'd like to see a plan, I'd like to see a plan or a proposal or a schematic, even an outline of how an addition might be put on that building.
Yeah, I mean, I can,
I mean, you got a good neighbor with some land over there that,
I mean, we would absolutely, believe me, I'm gonna make sure I do everything I can to correct the communication, here, but one of the things that, we're folding in, it's a master plan for the parish, not just for the school, which makes it a little bit longer, but we want to make sure we solve the problems in total. One of the things in the ideal world, we would actually have we'd increase the connectivity between the church and the school building. The architect has looked at the east side of the facility, and there's room to create a drive-through that runs behind the school. So we're looking at potentially having a structure that comes off the school towards the church, and the carriage house, the garage, is behind the rectory on the Iron Horse side. It's potentially being space that, for instance, could be parking, to increase the parking for the facility. So I mean, these are, I'm now talking about, possibilities, not I wouldn't go so far as to call them likelihoods at this moment, but the kinds of things that we're looking at to try and create the space issue, but also maintain the parking and the flow issue, making sure that traffic in general is managed well.
Did you consider other locations for these?
Yeah, the architect who did this work was strongly recommending that they be put further north out, if you remember where the property is, on what is grass, further away from the building. That was ruled out for site issues primarily. The other place that was looked at strongly was the south side of the building in the parking lot, towards the Iron Horse, as far back on the Iron Horse side.
Behind the church?
Between the church and the school, right next to the school, as far to the Iron Horse side of the, to the back of the property as they could fit.
Did you look at opposite, that is along?
Yeah, I think that there might, yes, closest to the L, right?
Move it back.
Yeah,
kind of hide them.
I believe that there's issues with something that's underground. I'm not positive of what the rationale are.
I mean, they're bad looking to start with.
I don't know why. That was looked at, but it was ruled out early, and I can't remember off the top of my head why it was ruled out.
Doesn't look like anything's there.
Well, see, our job here is to look at things that perhaps other folks haven't looked at in the process. I could go into a long discussion about exits and entry and how the pedestrian traffic goes in this area, the parking, the traffic, the circular. In my judgment right now, the potential safety issues, fire of course, the completion of the structure for a building permit or a certificate of occupancy, all of that is done, can be done by others. We're not comfortable with this, you know that. But on the other hand, we recognize the issue, we recognize the problem. We certainly don't want to impair your education process, and we want to pass it along with certain guidelines.
Going along with that, Howard's letter in that last paragraph asks if the square footage and the parking spaces are adequate. You know, that's.
I had
looked
thought
at.
I had thought they were. You know, I don't. I looked this morning. I don't see. I didn't see the square footage calculation. I have that information, but I don't have it with me.
Okay.
I thought it was about right, even after the loss of some parking spots.
Right.
Madam Chairman. Sorry. Well, finish your sentence. I thought
No,
you were done. I'm sorry.
I mean, remember, we have two distinctly different usage patterns for the property. We have the school, the weekday patterns where that north lot is entirely playground, for lack of a better description, and then Sundays it's entirely parking. So it's two different uses.
So, may I?
Yes.
I have a real problem with the fact that these got dropped there, out of sequence, and that it essentially is going to exempt the applicant from having to conform with the design criteria. And the idea that Hiram proposed of maybe putting a one-year limit on it, what do you do in a year? They come in and give us a report, you're not moving fast enough, we're not confident of your progress. Is there a point at which you can say, okay, you have to remove those regardless? I mean, if we're reluctant to take that approach now, certainly once they're in place and they're being used, I don't see us saying, put the kids out in the street. So I'm really troubled by the whole situation we're put in, and because I think that, as John said earlier, from a design standpoint, I can't see how we would be looking favorably at these trailers in those locations.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, John, I think that frankly, where the rubber really meets the road is going to be at the zoning commission. If they decide, for example, that 6 months is the right time, or a year is the right time, whatever, that's an enforceable decision. So whatever recommendation you can make, and I think you've had a good discussion about those things tonight, will be helpful to the zoning commission in terms of talking about this thing at their meeting. If you decide to make a decision tonight based on that, that's fine. If you decide to postpone it to your next meeting to gather the information about the parking, to gather whatever other information the applicant might wish to present before your next meeting, that's certainly another option as well. So,
are we constrained by any time limits?
No, not yet, no.
In terms of the applicant has, we have to make a decision within a certain number of days?
Well, I certainly think the next meeting would certainly be it. You really, because they're there, you don't want to postpone it any longer than necessary anyway. But certainly, probably at your next meeting, you'd have time to do that.
They have what?
6 months to stay.
It's a tough one, there's no question about it. We don't.
So we should just make a recommendation to zoning.
Jen?
Yes.
John asked a question. If you don't mind, I have no problem. This is all part of our process improvement and, working between the two of us. I have no problem if you send a recommendation that is, we don't like the fact, that includes these provisions that are reactions. The mere fact that you don't recommend approval does not mean necessarily that we at the zoning commission can't take into consideration other aspects and come up with a decision at our level. I think this is what Hiram is saying relative to trying to solve this problem. So it'd be perfectly acceptable to me if you said, we think they're ugly, we're sorry that they showed up before we had a chance to do this, and we don't like where they are, if that's what you decide. Or you could decide tonight to say, we want more information about the traffic or the parking or the location, and bring it back 2 weeks from now with the idea that you would then make your recommendation to the zoning commission. That could be that we don't approve this, we don't recommend approval from a design review perspective, because we're fearful that they become permanent. And then we deal with your recommendation in the context of all the things that we have to do relative to the time that they might be permitted to be there or otherwise. So it takes the next phase of what the church is trying to do or the school's trying to do out of your recommendation, because we're not going to resolve that tonight or next week or in 3 weeks. There isn't going to be enough definition of that. But the zoning commission may be in a position where it has to put some time limits on this relative to letting the kids have a warm place to be taught in the time being, but later. So I think that was what you were about to ask, and I would just say from my perspective, that would be perfect.
How do you enforce it on the other end? 30 months or whatever the...
Normal zoning enforcement action. If the permit is granted, if it's granted, for a certain period of time, and that time expires, then they get there's a normal process that we go through. The code enforcement officer sends a letter, fines start to accrue. It gets expensive very quickly. So that's what we would do if a zoning violation takes place. So if the permit that's granted is exceeded or somehow voided, that's the process that we, and obviously nobody wants to do that, so hopefully it doesn't happen.
No, and we would, we'd be absolutely okay with time limits and limits on communication, etc. I mean, it's not the same thing, but we tried to solve some of this problem by contracting the art program to an organization called the Art Truck. We had it in the parking lot, and folks thought that they didn't want that visible from Hot Meadow, so we removed that. But now we need to have them in the building instead of in that trailer. So we're absolutely we don't like the trailers. We don't want the trailers. We want to move beyond that. And one other thing I would point out is that these are ancillary programs, not ancillary programs, but we're not teaching math and science in those buildings, or we don't need those buildings to do that. These are things that are the extracurricular type of activities, which we certainly want. We want it to be a competitive school in that regard, but if temporarily we had to do without them in order to
So Hiram, can I make a recommendation, or do I have to, or does somebody else have to?
You might want to voice that and just put it to a vote.
I think what I'd like to recommend is that we recommend that zoning places a time limit on these temporary structures of 6 months. To me, that puts us to end of August, which allows the school in that time to work hard on their master plan, their plan for their programs, and within the next few meetings, we recommend that St. Mary's comes back and shares with us their master plan, the development of their progress, ideas that they're looking at, and in 6 months, by that time, I would hope St. Mary's would have a plan of action that would eliminate or, even decrease that 24 to 30 month time limit.
So is that a motion?
Can I make a motion to recommend that, or can I just?
Sure, if somebody else might want to.
I'll agree with that. If I have to make that motion, then I'll make that.
Could I make a friendly amendment to the motion, or then you can decide if you're going to accept it?
I think we're all in the same agreement here.
But the motion should express our displeasure.
Yes.
That the units showed up.
Agree.
And
exactly.
that they do not conform with any of our design criteria, and we do not think that they should be allowed to stay there for any length of time.
I do agree with
The
that.
recommendation would be, I would say 6 months. You guys, that should give us enough time to figure it out. Okay, so I make that motion
As amended?
as amended with those conditions, yes, with those comments.
That's it.
Just a second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great, thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Good.
Okay, there were some discussion items that were listed there. I wouldn't go into any great detail on those. I have one other item that I want to cover under correspondence with you tonight, if we have a few minutes. Village District Study in Weetag is pretty much wrapped up. Just have been spending some time with the Hartford Land Use Study Committee and meetings with regard to the Hartford recently, so I haven't finished that up, but it'll be finished up fairly shortly. As soon as I get that wrapped up, I'll bring it to you. Some of you may recall that was a study that we had a lot of input from architects, engineers, and a lot of people in the Weetag area as well, and it's coming along pretty well. I just need to finish that up and get those final touches on it for you, and I'll get that to you very soon. The marketing study is really more of an economic development activity. The Economic Development Commission is talking about that. There's also another group that's being formed. Board of Selectmen appointed an Economic Development Task Force group that'll talk a little bit more about marketing and implementation of marketing studies townwide. First meeting of that group will be March 18th, I believe, just in case you have nothing else to do that evening and want to come to that. I think that'll be upstairs in the Board of Ed conference room, actually, because the Board of Finance is down here. And then the last thing I have is under ongoing consulting projects. The Hartford Land Use Study Committee, I asked for comments from the public by February 28th, which obviously just passed. Didn't get any more comments, so I'm going to send that back to the consultant to hopefully finish that up, get that to the Hartford, and then get that back in front of the land use commissions, including this board, in the very near future, hopefully by the middle of March, which is not far away. I'll have that back to you for consideration. The Zoning Commission will at some point decide whether to have a public hearing on that, adopt that code, which will essentially put a whole series of potential uses in place for the Hartford property. Developers are looking at that now and trying to decide what could they do there. As soon as that code is in fact adopted, they'll have answers to those questions, and we hope that someone will come forward and decide to do something there. So we're excited about that as well. So that's it for ongoing projects. I did want to mention one thing that I just actually just received today. Some of you remember, although others that are new to the board may not. Drake Hill Mall had some lights in the parking lot that were part of their redevelopment plan. There was a lot of discussion about the lights in the lot originally not being put in in accordance with the plan. The Zoning Commission very kindly agreed to allow the developer to keep some of the lights and replaced only 3, I think, what we ended up with. Yep. So, no good deed, as they say. So what I got today was a proposal from the Drake Hill folks about relamping all their lighting retrofit for the interior and exterior of the site. So this is what I'm looking for now. You don't have the information. I didn't make copies of it today, but just to let you know, it's $72,000 worth of new bulbs, going from metal halide and other types of lighting to LED lighting. And this is the type of thing where I certainly think this is a perfect opportunity for this board to weigh in as to whether you think these changes are appropriate or not, given the central location of that facility in town, what the current lights are now, what it looks like now, what will be the impact if we use LEDs there. I think there are a lot of questions, and I certainly don't have all those answers because I just got this today. Some of the spec...
Would it be possible for them to install one or two for us to look at?
I think there's expertise on this board, John, that can take a look at the specs that we have. What I'd like them to do is give us a site plan, show us the lighting plan with the proposed lights on them, so you can take a look at them, and then you can make a decision. I'd hate to go ahead and put a couple in, because then they're going to say, well, you made us spend this money.
Those things are bright.
Yep, I think that's fine.
So we'll do
$72,000, you said?
$72,000, yeah. So I think that's a lot of bulbs.
Have they done an illumination plan?
Originally they did one for the original plan, and then, as I say, they somehow got out of hand and they installed a few other things that weren't originally approved. So I guess I'm very sort of overly sensitive about this. Number one, it's a very central location, and I think we need to be careful about the lighting there. But I'm happy to tell them to provide that information and then bring that to your next meeting for you to take a look at. And I'll get it to you before the meeting too, because frankly, looking at a whole series of lighting specs and aerial photometry is probably not something you want to do sitting here at a meeting, so I'm happy to do that. So, is that acceptable?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think we could sort of run off at there's some of the pictures they show are full cutoffs, and some of the other things they've got wall packs, and now I think you need to take a hard look at that. Maybe my suggestion. Okay. Great. Good. That's basically all I have this evening. So unless you have anything else, questions for me or anything else.
Let me just ask you a question. It's not very important, but Metro Beast moved their operation, and then somebody came in and renovated the front of that store. Was that ever run through?
Yes. Yeah. Just before this board took place.
Just before I came. Yeah. I was wondering. I was watching the work go on.
Yep.
I don't have any objection to it. I just wondered where it was.
So far, there's one other
regulatory.
One other small part of that too. On the subway side of it, there's a couple of, there's an entrance to it, and then there's a little bump out, and then there's an entrance in the back. That ultimately was going to be closed in as well. Those plans we do have those plans in-house.
Right,
So yeah, they did come through with that.
Just to the post office.
Yeah. Did. So.
Do we need to approve the meeting minutes from last? Approval of minutes from January 6, 2014.
So moved.
All in favor? All right, I move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.